Dear listeners, your body changes its mind, your energy changes its terms, and you are standing there holding a craft, an identity, a way of moving through the world, and it does not fit the same way anymore. Most people grieve that moment in midlife in private. And today's guest decided to actually do something with it. Yeah. So, hey, dear listeners, welcome back to another powerful episode of Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. I'm your host, Avik, and today, my guest, please welcome Seth Panitch. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Afik. I'm happy to be here.
Amazing, amazing. And so, dear listeners, like before we delve deep into the discussion, I'd quickly love to introduce you with Seth. So, Seth is here to talk about what uh, it has been like to refocus from uh, theater to fiction writing for the sake of its mind and his body just after turning 50. So, I'm really welcome, Seth. And before we go in, if you can just tell us, like, um, what does a morning look like for you now compared to how it looked 5 years ago?
Interesting question. So how does a morning look to me?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sleeping better, so the morning looks a little clearer to me, I will say, as opposed to 5 years ago. I think the 5 years ago let's see, is pretty much right about the time that I started thinking about writing fiction. And so my mind was usually on a lot of theater projects, when I'd wake up. Would kind of, build my anxiety through the day. Just because there's such a time limit on theater, right? You start rehearsing and you know that you're going to open in 2 months. But now, when I wake up, I'm thinking about the world that I'm going to be writing in, and I think it's a calmer place for me to be in. In some ways, it's a more exciting place to be in, and it takes me a while to wake up. I'm not a morning flower, Avik, so I'm usually running in the morning or preparing to teach on the days that I teach at the university. Um, but yeah, the mornings look, to be perfectly honest, a little bit brighter to me than they did 5 years ago.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I really understand. I mean, this really, really something which we all love it because the first hour, the first cup of something, the first thing your brain reaches for, and
Hmm.
all is right. So yeah, and like when people hear the phrase um reinvention after 50, and they often picture someone who, I'd say, just got bored and decided to chase a kind of passion like it was a soft choice. But the kind of pivot that you made was not that. So it came with the body telling you something that, uh, I mean, with a mind asking for a different feel. So, what do you think people get wrong about midlife reinvention when the trigger is kind of uh, health and not a kind of boredom?
That's a beautiful way of putting things, and I pause before I say what people get wrong, because obviously, I think all of us approach middle age in a different way. We all have different things that we want to accomplish, and different things that please us. I think the one thing that we probably get wrong is becoming too inertial, and maybe that's why people get bored, because they're just stuck in one rut over and over, and they don't realize there's a myriad of things they can do with their lives, no matter what they're working on in their 9 to 5 jobs. Because obviously, I don't make enough through my fiction writing to quit the university. I wish I could, but that's not the reality. Um, for me, it wasn't boredom, like you say. For me, I could sense that the high intensity of 6 nights a week being in rehearsal and teaching during the day and in between writing plays, because I do plays in New York, and prepping to act at Shakespeare festivals, which I've done, that there was so much in the day, Avik, that I didn't have time to hear what I really wanted to do because it was so chock full of what I thought I had to do. And I actually have a really dear friend, had one at the university, and he's since retired. His name's Cornelius Carter, head of the dance program here. And he told me that I was going to have to find some sort of quiet place where I could hear the next thing. And he actually said that to me probably 3 or 4 years before I heard fiction writing calling to me. It took me a while to just process what he had said. I guess it was just a small voice in the back of my head, and it just got louder and louder and louder as I was thinking also, Avik, about what's going to be next for me, because I'm not going to teach forever. There comes a time where, and I love teaching. I don't love academia, to be honest. I don't love the university system, but I love the students and I love being in the classroom. But even that doesn't last forever. At some point, they're going to need someone younger and, at the head of their class. So thinking about what's going to be next in my life and preparing for it before it came to me, I think is something that maybe people get wrong, right? They don't prepare for what that next step is going to be, and they don't get themselves into the act of preparing for it. So when it hits, they don't do it. And so that's sort of what happened to me in my process as I thought about what the next step was going to be. I had always wanted to write when I was a kid, but had never done it because all these doors opened for me as an actor and a playwright. And so for me, it was looking back on my life and saying, is there something I really want to do that I never did? And the answer, of course, was writing a book. And then you just have to, man, it's like Nike, the commercials. You just have to do it. And that's hopefully what I've done.
Exactly. And I also want to ask you, like, when you try to explain it to people in your old world, what did they hear that you did not actually say? And
Hmm. Well, conversely, most of the people I spoke to about this thought I was insane. So, they all said, you're making films, you're doing this, why on earth would you want to do that? Um, I think the one person that understood, my wife always understands, and I think that she saw me as an author before I did, which is a really beautiful thing. Like, I wrote the book. I think even after I wrote it, I still couldn't call myself a novelist. So she actually, for my birthday, made a sign and put it outside my office door that says Seth Panitch novelist, just to remind me that I'm a. So she saw that before I did. I think my mother also has always been a huge, she's always wanted me to write. And she has liked my plays a lot, but I think she always wanted me to write long form, and knew that I had that in me. Going all the way back, the last person I'll say is in college. The first real support of my writing, like professional, that I felt was professional, was my college professor, John Bouchard, who's actually a dear friend of mine now. He was my acting teacher. But I wrote a play called Waltz of the Iron Maidens about the Grand Inquisitor Torquemada during the Spanish Inquisition. Um, and it was a very dark comic piece. But he gave me the Performance of the Year award for the department for the writing of the play. So for me as an actor to know that writing could be a performance, could be something considered on that level was something that I didn't see. And, obviously that put me into playwriting, but I think the seeds of that were certainly something that awoke in me as I began writing.
so, and obviously that, and this isn't something I think a lot of people in their 40s and 50s carry quietly. Um, and obviously the world rewards the highlight kind of real version of it, right? And almost never ask about the body underneath it. So yeah, I mean the way you explained that gap, I mean, reframes something for me. So definitely. And uh, I want to go under the surface of that decision. Like for from the outside, this looks like kind of very clean story, theater fiction. But I suspect that there was uh, really happening. I mean, what was really happening in you was much messier and much older than the moment that you actually made the switch. So, uh, what was building underneath? I mean, in the years before you actually moved.
Yeah, yeah, so yeah, I think you're right. It's like birth, right? I mean, a birth, everyone thinks, oh, the baby comes out and it's clean, but it's messy, and it sort of claws its way out, and there's pain involved with all of that, and certainly been having that as well. I think what happened in theater for me, and again, this is not. I still love theater, and it is what I teach, and I adore the art form. But I had been doing it, Ivy, for I mean, my first professional job was when I think I was 21. It was a summer theater. But that was my first professional job. So for about 31 years, I had been doing that. And it began to feel hmm, like a job, which, sounds like a pathetic thing to say. But for me, theater, no matter how hard I worked, it never felt like I was working. And it started to feel like I was working. It started to feel less about the passion and more about delivering a product. And that's fine if that's what you want to do with your life, but that's not what I want to do with my life. The process has always interested me more so than the product. And I think that's what was going on. Um, I was more tired during rehearsals at night, and I know that's my body breaking down, but it was also my mind saying, "We've done this." And I think that there's a little bit of an exhaustion that comes from that. I don't think that my work as a director suffered, but I think that the pleasure that I derived from it lessened, the last few shows that I did, and I started to feel in my mind the end of that major push to direct as much as I could, to get as many plays as I could done in New York. I think it also helped that in 2023, I filmed what might be my last film, and that was very exhausting for me. I was playing the lead in it, and it was a very demanding process. And I was playing a character that was a very dark character, and I think that brought a lot of dark things out of me, and it during the shoot of it, Avik, I was separate from other people because I'm a method actor, so I really like to feel that when I'm on set, and that helped me separate from what I was doing to start that push away from it. The last thing that happened, and this is very much body health, which you brought up, for me that was messy, is that I was pushing myself so hard,
Mm,
and I think my body I wasn't cognizant of the fact that I had cracked 50. My body was cognizant of it, but my mind wasn't. So I was pushing myself the same sorts of
mm,
hours without any sort of break that I used to. So I had this sort of heart issue where my blood pressure shot up and I couldn't get it down. Uh, I couldn't get it down for days, weeks, and it affected my mind as well. Then the body came back and affected my mind. And at the time, I was really nervous. I thought I was going to have a heart attack, and I didn't. But I really stressed myself to such an extreme, and it put me out for about 2 months, and I'd never gone through something like that in my entire life. I had never felt at the whim of my body like that, ever. And so, I thought, I even, contemplated, "Is this it? I mean, am I gonna go into the hospital and not come out?" You know what goes through your mind when you're really, really upset, and um, when I came out the other side, I was very thankful for that because it made me face the fact that I'm going to have to run less. I'm a very avid runner. I was pushing myself way too hard
mm.
to hit times that I hadn't hit since I was in college. You can't do that when you're after 50, or at least I can't. I was I was rehearsing too much at night, and so I backed out of directing at the university and backed out of directing at festivals, and I'm not doing as many shows, if at all, in New York. And as I look back on that, I don't look back at it as a slowing down. I look back at it as an acknowledgement of what I can do now which is right. And when I get anxious, to take a break from the writing, I also think that my teaching has improved because I'm not trying to accomplish certain things in each class. I just try to teach the students to the best of my and their ability, and I actually don't worry about the structure of the class. I have things that I want to accomplish. It's the same thing about writing every day. I used to feel that I had to do 10 pages a day or I had failed. I write what I write, and in the end, it's actually better.
I mean, it's and there is a lot of things to learn from, I have to say, because um, yes, I mean that stays with you. There's a particular grief in realizing that the body had been telling the truth long before the mind was willing to translate it. So,
Yeah.
um, and I think a lot of listeners are going to feel that one without having words for it. So, definitely true.
I think also that the important thing is when you feel the body breaking down, um, it's not and this is tough to say, right? Because at the time I didn't feel this way, but it's not a limitation. It's a refocusing. If you hit if you're trying to run in a certain direction and someone puts a giant barrier in your way or a slow runner in a marathon, right? You don't just stop. You go around that, right?
Mm.
To a new path. If you're driving in a car and the street is closed, you don't say, "Well, I'm not going to dinner." You find another route to where you want to go, because where you want to go is passion and art and creativity and happiness, whatever that is in your life, and that doesn't have to be where you thought it was. It can be you can get to the same place in a different location, if that makes sense. And I think
Same.
yeah, and I think that's what the body's telling you. You can go to the same place. You don't have to quote slow down. You can speed up in other areas in your life. And I think that's what we forget when we start to age.
Mm, exactly. Yeah. So, if we think of a kind of practical way, people in their 40s, 50s, listening to this who are sensing their own pivot coming, they're going to want something that they can actually do. So, um, what was the practice, the habit, or maybe the small thing that you put in place that actually made the transition kind of livable? Like,
Mm.
uh, and the real one that you do. Yeah.
Yeah, I for me, what made the transition workable for me to feel like I was accomplishing something, was to go back to being a student. And what I mean by that is, novel writing for me was going to be brand new. I mean, I had written short stories in college, my lord, but that's like literally another century, right? So, so what I did was I bought a bunch of books, like and I didn't wanna read it on a screen. I bought hard copies of books. That to me felt like it was real, you know? I could see it in my office, I could see the stack of books, and I started reading through them, and I compiled bit by bit how I wanted to write by pulling different pieces, like making a Frankenstein monster, like pieces of all of these books. And as I read them, I saw them stack up. It went from the right side to the left side. And so I could see the accomplishment. So even though I wasn't writing yet, I saw that I was moving forward, that I was beginning that transition. The toughest part about that transitional time that I'll tell the readers, the listeners, is that as you transition to this new thing, you're going to be it's like a tug of war. You're going to be pulled back to what you've been doing for decades. The people that you've worked with are going to I got calls to go work at theaters. Actors that I've worked with asked that I love to work with asked, well, what's the next project? And so you're going to feel that pull. Having to develop the word no is another part of that process because you're going to have been successful in something in your life and you're going to have to say no to that success so you can leave yourself open to either fail or succeed in this new venture. And that is a very difficult part of that transition because you're really letting go of something that's guaranteed that people are going to respect about you towards something where you don't have that. So there is a loss of confidence in that transition. And that's why for me, buying those books, reading those books, and compiling them into my attack plan really helped me build the confidence that I could take this next step.
Mm, true. Exactly true. Yeah. I have to say that the get off because nobody reinvents their life cleanly.
Mhm.
There must have been weeks, months, even where the doubt came in hard. Um, where you kind of wondered like if you had been given up too much or kind
Mm.
of made a mistake. So how do you handle those seasons of that? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, that's not easy, and I'm still in transition, right? I mean, I started learning how to write at 52, but I didn't write this my first novel, Antique,
Mhm.
till 3 years ago. So 54,
Mhm.
is when I started writing it. So this is still very fresh for me. It's very difficult when I go to a play. It's still tough because I see actors that I respect or I'd love to work with, and I say, "Wow, I could do this with that actor." I see a set and I think, "Oh, I would use that differently as a director, not better, just differently." I speak to my friends that are doing Shakespeare, and I love to act in Shakespeare. I love that so much, and I think, "Oh, maybe if I just dabble in that a little bit, but I have to remind myself that if I do that, it means if I do that for a summer, that's 3 months. And for me, that's 300 pages that I haven't written. Um, and so that's where it gets messy for me. So your question was, how did I deal with that? Um, I had to ask myself and look deeply into it. And fortunately, when I went through my blood pressure issue, I got heavily into Zen meditation, and mindfulness, and Thich Nhat Hanh specifically, and that helped me quite a bit. Because what I did was I acknowledged that I was having jealousies, right, or feeling left out of theater, um, and then I was able to look into that in ways that I didn't used to be able to do so. I would knee jerk and go out and do another project because I felt jealous that I wasn't working and somebody else was, right? And so being able to look into that jealousy and say, okay, what are you jealous about? Well, I'd love to do that project. Well, great. Well, if you did that project, what wouldn't you do? Well, I wouldn't write 300 pages, which is three quarters of a first draft of a new novel. Well, Seth, what would you rather do? And to talk myself through that process is something that I used to not do. I still have to do it daily, because I'm on Facebook and my friends will say, "Hey, can you come see me in the show?" And I can feel that little twinge, right? That little knee jerk, and I always and I don't think we are ever going to not feel that if we did something for decades. So if anybody who's listening, you're not going to be able to turn that voice off. What you have to do is talk to that voice and talk it out. And there for some people, the answer is I need to go back. And that's great if that's an honest answer and you really want to go back. If you started this transition and what you learn is, no, I didn't appreciate what I had. I think that's a great reason to go back. And maybe that freshness, that fresh approach from being away from it a little bit will help you. For me, I know that it's not about going back, it's about going forward. So I just have to talk to that voice. Let it have its say, and reason with it. And eventually, if you're reasoning from the heart, I think that voice will listen. It'll never be completely quiet. It's a petulant child, but it'll quiet down for you a little bit.
Very well said. Yes, definitely. I really love and if listeners wants to connect with you, what will be the great medium to connect?
Well, I love to hear from listeners, and certainly if anybody decides to read
Mm.
my book Antique, I love to hear how, because she goes through a huge transition in that book, just as I was when I wrote it, how their transition was reminded, right? How they were reminded of it through the book.
Yeah.
The best way to connect with me, I'd say email me directly if they want it at sethpanitch@gmail.com. But I am on Instagram at Seth Panitch Author. And that's a terrific way to get in touch with me and see where I am and what I'm doing. And I'm also on TikTok at Seth.Panitch. But I'm always happy to hear from people that are going through transitions, and because I'm a born teacher,
Yeah.
I like to help.
Amazing. That's, I'd say, a really, really great one. And dear listeners, what I'll do is I'll put all the links, details, everything in the show notes for easy reference. And um, I have to say that if, um, uh, I mean, there was a moment in this conversation where you described the body knowing before the mind
Mhm.
would translate it. And I want listeners to hold that. And thank you, Seth, for all of that. And for everyone who is listening, or maybe you'll be listening later as well, sometimes the reinvention is not a kind of betrayal of who you were, it is a deeper loyalty to who you still are becoming.
Mm.
Um, with this hope, this is your host Ravi, and this is Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. We'll see you on the next episode on Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. Till then, be happy and keep smiling. Thank you so much.
Thank you.